the worst thing that Cartman has ever done? Was it the time he ate all the chicken skins from the KFC bucket? The time he infected Kyle with HIV? The time he made Scott Tenorman eat his own parents?
Yes! Oh, let me taste your tears, Scott. Your tears are so yummy and sweet.
Is it weird that I still want to say it was the chicken skin thing? Whatever the answer is, I think that we can all agree that over the years, Cartman has done some pretty terrible stuff. I mean, it's basically the hallmark of his character at this point, and it's why we all love to watch him, because we're all just sick individuals. But every so often, we get episodes like Osimo or La Petite Tourette, where Cartman tries to do something terrible, but it blows up in his face, causing him to suffer. And I like to think that these episodes are so popular because they bring him to justice. Because deep down, we all want to see that psychotic demon child get what he deserves. Kinda sounds weird when I say it out loud, but I don't even care, because it's just so damn satisfying to watch. And I know that when I need my fix, when I'm jonesing for some good old-fashioned Cartman torture, there's no better episode in the entire show to watch than season 12's breast cancer show ever. Now I could do the whole YouTuber thing and summarize my thoughts in this intro to get you all excited about my deep analysis, but you know the drill here. I don't like doing long intros, you don't like watching them, so let's just get into this thing.
Okay, children, let's all take our seats. Before we get started today, Wendy Testaburger is asked to share something with the class. Wendy?
They started this episode with Wendy doing a class announcement. Oh man, we're like 2 seconds into this thing and I already think it's being slick. Everybody knows that Wendy can be pretty preachy. I mean, she's also a bunch of other things and honestly one of the stronger characters on the show. But ultimately, she kind of has a reputation for being whiny and annoying about her various moral stances. It's how the kids at South Park Elementary tend to see her, and for better or for worse, it's her most memorable trait. It's like if Lisa Simpson was one of the South Park kids, she'd be Wendy. Or if Kyle Broflovsky was one of the South Park kids, he'd be Wendy. Anyways, the reason I'm saying all this is because of how this opening scene plays with that information in a clever way by leveraging Wendy's reputation to set up for the rest of the story. Because think about it, what are we used to? Cartman not really taking Wendy all that seriously. You know, he's like mocking or dismissive. And as the audience, we don't just expect that, we look forward to it. Because ripping on someone is funny when it's not happening to me. But as you'll see in this next clip, Wendy's big announcement isn't really all that preachy and annoying, it's just a brief thing on breast cancer awareness. Something that she shouldn't really be getting a hard time over. But because Cartman is Cartman, he does it anyways. And that actually reverses our reaction to the situation as the audience. Because this time, with his jokes about breast cancer, it feels like Cartman is going a bit too far. And also his jokes kind of suck for anyone that's not 8 years old. And that has this sort of profound effect on the viewer because it's breaking the pattern, shifting our mindsets so that we're ready for what's coming this episode. Or, you know, some pretentious bullshit like that.
This is a serious issue, Eric. What you're doing is very offensive.
Me? You're the one talking about killer titties. Watch out, guys. Wendy says boobs can kill people. Arrgh! Gonna get you.
Okay, so I'm gonna play devil's advocate here for a second. Do you really think that Cartman laughing at the word breast is that bad? Like, is it not just fairly standard or expected behavior for a 4th grader? Because to me, this never really felt like that big of a deal. I mean, it's obviously inappropriate to be laughing about cancer, but I actually don't think his jokes, or really anything he does in this opening scene, is really all that bad. At least not bad enough to warrant what happens to him at the end of the episode. But then again, I also think that from a writing perspective, that was an intentional decision that they made for the sake of pacing. Because by having Cartman start off so mildly, it allows for a greater sense of escalation as the episode goes on, giving Wendy a better reason to fight him as it continues. Now obviously, because this episode is a Cartman character study, again, because I can't stop covering these damn character study episodes, his personality will be the driving force behind everything bad that happens to him from here on out. And specifically, this episode is going to center around 2 of his biggest flaws: his unbelievably large hubris and his desperate need for approval. Because Cartman cares so much about managing his image at skew that there's nothing he won't do to try and look cool, which means that if being a dick to Wendy gets the other kids to laugh, he's gonna be a dick to Wendy. And that very desperation ends up being the main reason that he meets the fate he does at the end of this episode.
Every week he gets worse and nobody does anything.
Eric, stop being offensive.
I'm just trying to engage Wendy in a constructive dialogue about breast cancer awareness, Mr. Garrison.
No, you aren't.
I think it's really smart that they included that line from Wendy here about how this is a repeating behavior of Cartman's and that he's been only getting worse. Because on the off chance that this is somebody's first time watching the show, it not only fills them in on a bit of character history, but it also creates a sense of urgency along with it, which gives the audience this impression that things are reaching a boiling point, that action needs to be taken, which obviously leads to the finale of the episode. So yeah, some nice, efficient writing there. Anyways, one thing I want to talk about here before we leave this opening scene, since we're going to be analyzing Cartman Cartman's psychology anyways, is the simple fact that he's a bully. I'm like, yeah, I know, this is probably the most obvious thing to be pointing out, and yes, it is a little more complicated than just that, and yes, you absolutely should get the Steam Deck over the Switch too, because those prices, but I think it's still worth mentioning anyways, because at the end of the day, we have to recognize the fact that Cartman is always going to be putting other people down to improve his social standing or his self-esteem. That's just how he operates. And this entire episode hinges on that aspect of his character because of how it motivates almost everything he does in this first act.
Look out, everyone. There's some killer titties on the loose. Could have swore I heard them coming through the roof. Psst, officer, we need to get an APB out on those titties. They're armed and dangerous.
What is your problem?
Look how excited he is about this interaction, the poor idiot. Earlier I said that I didn't really think Cartman did anything that was bad enough to warrant getting his ass kicked yet, and I stand by that. But this scene is where he really crosses that line from annoying bully into massive asshole territory. Yes, pun intended, because this time it's completely unprovoked. There's no class presentation, there's no spotlight on Wendy. This is just Cartman going out of his way to be an asshole because it got him approval the first time, and now he wants to cash in again. And what I love about this scene is how it does such a great job at making that distinction. Like, he could have just dropped the bit and taken the W from earlier, but he can't resist going for more because he's greedy. He's gluttonous for that sweet, sweet approval, and most importantly, he thinks he can get away with it. And so instead he forces himself into a situation that actually does the opposite of what he wants. It puts his public image in jeopardy instead of helping it.
I'm gonna kick your ass. That's what I'm gonna do.
You're gonna kick my ass. You wanna throw down, dog? I'll throw down.
You think you're tough?
What's up? What's up?
I'll smack the out of you.
You know how I know that God exists? These arms, I don't know what it is about these flailing arm movements, but they are the greatest thing to happen in the universe. I mean, just look at them. They're beautiful. They're majestic. They're glorious. And that is why this is a perfect episode. So you know what this episode does better than any other South Park episode? Tension. This episode does such an amazing job at creating believable stakes and a feeling of suspense that builds all the way until the final scene. And yes, I even think it does it better than Casa Bonita, because there's something that's just so nice and grounded about the approach in this one. It doesn't rely on suspension of disbelief. There's no pretend meteor, underground bunkers, or cardboard robot costume. This is just two opposing forces finally colliding after years of buildup. It's a historical tension, one that's built on the core of both characters, and everything that happens here is directly motivated by their personalities. One lacks morals and the other embodies them. And that makes it feel realistic to the South Park world. Which, you know, keep in mind, I'm saying this as someone that loves when South Park gets absurd. Markiplier, Moses, Paris Hilton, and Mr. Slave's ass? I'll take all that you got. But if I'm gonna watch one of the more realistic and grounded takes on South Park, then this episode would be one of my top choices. Because it's just so tightly written and well executed. It doesn't get fancy, and it spends almost the entire time within the grounds of South Park Elementary, but that works in its favor because the focus is on delivering a character-driven narrative, and on that front, it delivers.
She's not gonna show up to a fight, dog. I'm sure she's already trying to figure a way to get out of it. Hey, check it out, she's totally staring you down.
I know this is literally just happy face to frowny face, but still, so good. It's so evocative for such a simple art style. Like, you can actually pinpoint the second his heart rips in half.
Now.
Honestly, it's kind of shocking to me that it took that glare from Wendy for Cartman to realize that she's serious about fighting him, especially given how mad she was in the hallways. But I guess that just goes to show how delusional Cartman can really be, which comes up later in the episode. But yeah, once it hits him that he's gonna get his ass kicked, every second of this scene gets so juicy, especially with the music here. Like, you can viscerally feel Cartman's dread and Wendy's violent rage. And from Eric's perspective, it's almost like a horror movie where Wendy is the cold-blooded killer, only she's coming for his reputation instead of his life. Also, side note, I think it's very fun to focus on Butters here when you know exactly what he ends up doing at the end of the episode, because you can see that he's playing little mind games with Eric in almost every scene they share.
Can't go too easy on her, though. God forbid she actually gets in a good punch and beats you.
Yeah, if you got beat up by a girl, everyone would think you were a faggot.
Like, look at that. Butters is so good at playing the innocent friend routine to disguise his true intentions. Like, yeah, obviously with hindsight, it's more clear that he just wants Cartman to suffer. I mean, just look at the way he's smiling after his comment while drinking that milk. He knows exactly what he's doing. He knows it's making lactose intolerant people froth at the mouth with jealousy. But yeah, this is a very calculated attack from Butters. He knows that Cartman's weak point is that he's self-conscious, so saying it'll look bad if he loses to Wendy is obviously gonna get in his head. And I mean, just look at Cartman. He's terrified. It got in his head. Which means I gotta say, this is a much more devious side of Butters than we're used to getting. Which I like. I like how throughout this entire episode, he's basically using the Wendy situation to vicariously live out his revenge on Eric. And as you'll see later, he's very careful about choosing his words to both make sure that the fight happens and also hide his true intentions from basically everybody.
I was wrong to make fun of breast cancer, and I'm very remorsefulness.
No! If you're really sorry and you want to apologize to me, then do it in front of everyone.
Apologize? That's not what I said, you dumb bitch.
All right, guys, look. I don't exactly know how to put this, but it's Cartman's arms again. They're just the greatest thing ever. I'm obsessed with them. It's better than the guitar buildup in Only in Dreams. Better than a world where Family Guy stopped after Seth MacFarlane quit writing for it. I mean, just look at this dance we got out of them. Anyways, this scene is what I like to call phase 1 of Cartman's desperation. It's where he's willing to suck it up and quietly apologize to Wendy. Now for Cartman, this is of course entirely insincere, but Wendy is actually pretty noble here and provides him a way out of the fight. He just has to risk the one thing he cares about most, approval from the other kids at school, by apologizing to Wendy publicly, which he obviously won't do. Now phase 1 is still in the realm of normal kid reactions. We haven't yet been pushed into that extreme territory that only Cartman can take us to. We just see that he's willing to do a bit of groveling to get Wendy to change her mind. But as the episode goes on, his character arc is going to move in a direction that pushes his personality traits to the extreme, especially his massive ego and the lengths he'll go to spare his reputation. And just like with the pacing around his shitty behavior, this escalation is used as a great comedic tool. Like, this scene is funny because of how Cartman tries to balance his two desires in the most Cartman way possible, but the contrast between this attempt and what comes later is what really helps us build toward the final punchline at the end of the episode.
So, everyone's saying there's gonna be a fight between Eric Cartman and your girlfriend.
I guess so.
And you're gonna just let that guy beat up on your woman? Doesn't that, like, go against your jockey man code or something?
Anyone else ever wonder why the whole goth kids harping on Stan thing was included in this episode? I just don't get the point of this. Like, if this was just a one-off scene, I'd understand. But then it comes up again later in the episode, so again, I don't get why. But I do like the rest of the scene, because it shows how the school is reacting to the situation, what they think is gonna happen with the fight. Plus, I like that we totally get another sneaky Butters moment where he keeps up his charade.
Cartman said that Wendy's already begging him to call it off.
I'll bet she is. I hope not. I want to see Eric kick the crap out of her.
I mean, first of all, I'm surprised that any of the kids are confident that Cartman would beat up Wendy. Like, we're talking about the kid that cried after one hit to the face from Kyle. He's the laziest kid at school that has never shown any sort of athleticism or strength whatsoever, so why would they think he's gonna win? Is it because of how he tossed Kyle like 10 feet into the air in that one part of the Casa Bonita episode? I mean, that's gotta be it, because I know it's not just a boy versus girl thing. These kids are like 8 years old. The difference in strength is almost non-existent. But yeah, back to my original point, why are the goth kids giving Stan a hard time about this? Aren't goth kids typically progressive? Why are they telling Stan that it's his job to stop Wendy? Why not just go to Wendy herself? The only reason I can think of is that they have rapport with Stan already after the Raisins episode, so they feel more comfortable with him than with her. But yeah, I don't know, still, it feels kind of weird to me. And honestly, I kind of think this whole interaction only happens so that they have an excuse to do the underwear scene later in the episode. Or maybe they just wanted to give Stan something to do, or they didn't have enough time to fill the Cartman Wendy stuff, so they needed something to cut to. I don't know. Either way, this whole thing just kind of comes off to me as padding for the episode. Not that I think it takes anything away from it, but it just doesn't really add anything either.
Wendy, you're not gonna believe this. I just found out my mom has breast cancer. Wendy, I have here $27 in cash. If you just call off the fight, then
You can't bribe your way out of this.
Wendy, I have muscular dystrophy. My mom has muscular dystrophy in her boobs.
I love this scene. It's a very satisfying scene, and it's also a very surprising scene, because we're still in the first act of the episode and we're already getting Cartman and Wendy alone together. And I'm not gonna lie, I didn't expect that the first time I saw this thing, but I'm glad they went for it, because their conflict is the source of all tension in this story. So naturally, Cartman's personality is funniest when they're together, especially as he shamelessly tries to get out of the fight by lying over and over again, which only pisses off Wendy more because it's the exact kind of thing that she hates. So that's what makes their dynamic together so funny. Lying is all that Cartman knows how to do, and ethics is all that Wendy will respond to. So the harder he tries to get out of it, the more he pushes her into that bad bitch territory, which is just a great use of a fairly simple situation to draw out the best of their personalities.
You don't get it, asshole! There is nothing you can do to stop this fight. I am going to wipe the playground with you right in front of everyone. I am going to shove your ass down your throat and make you eat your underwear.
Gotta respect Wendy here. She's completely committed to literally fighting for her beliefs no matter what Cartman does or says. And speaking of Cartman, I love that we get to watch him grovel and humiliate himself while getting absolutely nothing out of it. It's a beautiful thing. People often talk about how watching him get his ass kicked at the end is what makes this episode so satisfying, but I disagree. That's only part of it. Really, it's the whole journey that's satisfying because we get to see Cartman suffer throughout the entire thing. And in moments like this, it's a much more psychological torment than the literal beating he gets later, which is why scenes like this one tend to excel, because it takes that suffering to painful and hilarious levels. Like, it dials up Cartman's pathetic desperation so far that eventually you end up with the pathetic fat kid eating his own underwear for absolutely no useful reason. Now this scene is what I like to call phase 1000 of Cartman's desperation. Because seriously, come on, I mean, did you see that? He literally ate his own underwear. Tell me that's not just as satisfying as the big fight at the end of the episode, or at least somewhere close. I mean, look at how much pain it's causing him, and how ridiculous his face is here, and how horrified Wendy looks. God, it's just such a wonderfully degrading moment for Cartman, and a great visual gag for the show in general. Especially when it's coupled with that bit at the end of the scene where Cartman still tries to look cool despite the fact that he's on the ground and pantless.
When did it fair I ate my underwear for you? No! Yo, what's up, dog?
A lot of Cartman's episodes derive their comedy from how sadistic, manipulative, and clever he can be. They usually show him taking advantage of someone or something and only really getting his comeuppance at the end, if at all. And those episodes are funny because of Cartman's personality and how far he's willing to take things to get what he wants. But the thing is, they usually have him in a position of control. These are your Scott Tenormans, Cartoon Wars, Casa Bonita. Even a lot of his side stories tend to go that way pretty frequently. But then you get episodes like this one, where Cartman is clearly a focus, but he doesn't have any control at all. He's still Cartman, he's still this manipulative little asshole kid, but he's floundering. He's powerless and failing at every turn, causing himself more and more suffering as the story moves along. That's what makes this one of the best Cartman episodes in the whole show. It's just so damn fun to see him squirm, especially when he deserves it so thoroughly. Though I gotta say, I'm surprised Wendy didn't let him off the hook after the underwear thing. I mean, I get the principle of the matter, she wants him to get the punishment he deserves, but I mean, he ate his underwear. It's gotta be worth something, right?
I totally can't see the fight, dude. I've got detention after school. Detention. That's it. I gotta get detention, fast! No!
Eric, did you just take a crap on my desk?
What's up? What's up? Crapped on your desk, Doug. What's up with that?
Obviously, after talking about Cartman squirming, I was gonna cut to the crapping on the desk scene. You don't just misuse the crapping on the desk scene, okay? It's important. You gotta treat it lovingly, really give it its moment to shine. But yeah, this scene more or less just reinforces everything that I've already been saying about Cartman and about Wendy and even about Butters. So instead of covering those points again, I wanna draw attention to what the scene accomplishes for the structure of the episode. Because even though it's just a short little part of the story, it uses that time so effectively. It builds on the tension and anticipation around the fight, literally acting as a ticking time situation. It drives home how cornered into a wall Cartman is, emphasizing his terror terror. And it's all being done very intentionally to edge the audience and make us feel like the fight is about to happen, only to then make us wait a little longer to finally see it, really getting us to earn that finale. So yeah, it's just a fantastic use of tension, especially how it all resolves so suddenly in this perfect comic relief moment when Cartman starts crapping on a desk. Like seriously, how is this episode filled with so many great visual gags? Also, this scene has arms. I swear I'm just gonna start doing them randomly in conversations with people and act like it's totally normal.
Ah, sweet.
Eric! Hey, Eric! Eric, well, what's going on? Everyone's starting to say you got detention on purpose to get out of fighting Wendy.
Now, I've commented on this a little bit already, but one thing I really love about this episode is the school itself. When I say that, I mean the kids, the culture, and to some degree, even the building too. Like, I think it's cool that we're seeing the detention room right now because we never usually get to see it. And I like how the story up until this point has been entirely contained within the grounds of South Park Elementary. It makes the setting feel more alive and gives the story more focus. There's always an audience for everything that happens because the kids are reacting to the different story beats. It helps capture the excitement around the fight and how at school, fights like this really do turn into a main event. And because the timeline is cut down to just the school day so far, as opposed to covering multiple days like in most South Park episodes, we get to feel like we're right there with Cartman as his day is happening, which not only helps with tension building, but also gives us a real sense of how valuable his time is as a resource. He only has so much of it to come up with an escape plan.
Then why'd you crap on Garrett at the desk?
Because I'm hardcore. You know, I'm anti-establishment. That's how I roll, dogs. I do hardcore stuff like that.
That's what I said. I told everyone outside, Cartman ain't scared of fighting Wendy. He'd do it if he could.
God damn, Butters is a sneaky little bastard, isn't he? He's so committed to this lie that he's on Eric's side, really going out of his way to throw everyone off his trail. And he's even forcing Cartman's hand by telling everyone that he knew Eric wouldn't back down, making Cartman feel even more compelled to show up for the fight so as not to prove that sentiment wrong. Quite an improvement from the debut of Butters' dark side back in season 6. Because I mean, this is some seriously manipulative behavior. Also, I'm not gonna lie, I totally overlooked this when I made my Butters video, and had I realized that he was already being this deceitful by season 12, probably would have altered the script a little bit. But anyways, the main function of this scene is to tell Cartman that the fight has now been rescheduled to the next morning before school so that detention can't get in the way of it happening again, backing him even further into that corner, making his brief sigh of relief all for nothing. Which technically doesn't do that much for the story other than bring us back to where we already were, but I do like how this sort of reinforces that Wendy is this inescapable force in her pursuit of justice. She's like the Terminator and Cartman is Sarah Connor, which means that all that Cartman can really do is whatever the hell happens in Terminator. I don't know, I haven't seen that movie. Why did I make this analogy? I just know that Bill Cosby is a real live human.
Wendy, have you been bullying kids at school?
What? No!
Well, do you want to explain why this little boy's mother had to come talk to us?
Did you tell this little boy you were going to beat him up?
Okay, first of all, is that Wendy's grandmother? Why is this the first time we've ever seen Wendy's grandmother? I mean, I know she died in season 1, but when will we get to know more about Wendy's grandmother? And second of all, I can't tell what's more pathetic, Cartman running to his mom or the underwear eating. Because the underwear eating was gross and humiliating, but at least it was something that he did on his own. He took matters into his own hands, really putting those tighty whities where his mouth was, if you know what I mean. But this is just downright disgraceful. Fake crying and lying to Wendy's parents so that she has no choice but to back down. Somehow that feels way worse to me than anything else he's done in this episode. Really a brand new low. Like that Treble Charger song that only Canadians will remember, because why would Americans know who Treble Charger is? Now, one thing I find interesting about this scene is the difference we get to see in Leanne's parenting style versus the Testaburgers. Wendy's parents are clearly very strict. She even calls her dad sir at one point, and that probably contributed to Wendy being a disciplined person, if nothing else. Meanwhile, Leanne is literally coddling Eric and giving into his crying, which has obviously contributed to Eric becoming this needy manipulator kid that's doing this right now. Though I do gotta hand it to him, his ability to fake cry on command is pretty impressive. And I do think it highlights what a master of manipulation he really is.
Wendy, I really think you're awesome. And I know I'm just a nerdy little weakling to you, but I want to be your friend because I don't have that many friends at school.
Yeah, like, let's give credit where credit's due. It might be pathetic, but this is the perfect angle of attack for Eric. Wendy's parents don't know him. They don't know that this is all bullshit If you're Cartman, pretending you want to be Wendy's friend is like the best thing you could possibly say. There's just no way her parents don't take that bait and prevent her from fighting him. In fact, it's so good that he already knows he's won, which we see just moments after he says this when he starts making faces at Wendy. And that finally brings us to the side of Cartman that I've been waiting to talk about for this whole video. His hubris, his ego, the other personality trait of his that caused this situation to escalate into a fight in the first place. It's why he couldn't resist taking a victory lap on Wendy with his stupid breast chokes in the beginning of the episode, and it's also going to be his downfall when they get back to school, which I'll elaborate on a bit more in the next scene. But yeah, we get a really solid taste of it here, because of course it's not enough for him to outsmart Wendy and stop the fight, he's got to flex his power over her too.
My report today is on breast cancer awareness. I do not believe enough is being done. And like the victims of breast cancer, there's something I'd like to get off my chest.
Bet you thought I was gonna cut to the schoolyard scene where Cartman taunts Wendy and calls her a chicken, but I didn't, because then my point would be redundant, and also go watch the actual episode if you just want to see the clips. But anyways, let's talk about what Cartman is doing here, because at this point in the story, he's successfully gotten out of the fight with Wendy, and he's done it without having to compromise on his image at school. In fact, he might even look better now because Wendy was the one who backed down. But if he has everything that he wants, then why go out of his way to taunt her with this presentation? It's not like the other kids at school are gonna think much of it. It's not gonna make him look even cooler to any of them. Well, the reason is that this presentation is specifically for Wendy, at least from a character standpoint. From an episode structure standpoint, is to justify the talk Principal Victoria has with Wendy in the following scene. But in terms of Cartman as a character, this is all about exerting control. It's a flare of his ego. He wants Wendy to know that he can bully her all he wants and that there's nothing she can do about it. There will be no consequences, which only reinforces his own warped view of the world. Because see, Cartman doesn't understand consequences, at least not when they're for his own actions. He seems to truly believe that he can just do whatever he wants and then lie or manipulate his way out of the situation, which is exactly how things played out for him here. And so now that he thinks he's home free, the power has immediately gone to his head and we've looped back to the start of the episode. Only this time it's Cartman giving the presentation on breast cancer instead of Wendy. Yeah, it's like a metaphor for Cartman hijacking everything from her, which is totally my way of foreshadowing something I'm gonna talk about in like 2 minutes. But seriously, now that Cartman is in the position to speak, Wendy looks more powerless than ever. In fact, even when she tries to speak up about it, she gets cut off by the principal.
Why? Why are you doing this to me? Why won't you just stop?
Wendy!
Wendy Testaburger to the principal's office, please. Wendy Testaburger to the principal's office.
God!
Now, I've spent pretty much this entire video talking mostly about Cartman. I mean, I've said a thing or two about Wendy, but really, this has primarily been a Cartman video because this has primarily been a Cartman episode. But what if we didn't look at this as a Cartman episode? What if we chose to look at this as a Wendy episode? I mean, we can all agree that Wendy is the good guy in this situation and that Cartman is the villain. So what happens if we reframe this story from that perspective? Well, I'll tell you what happens. You basically end up with the makings of a superhero movie or a sports movie, like Rocky. Yeah, let's go with Rocky, because superhero movies are kind of lame. From Wendy's perspective, this episode may as well be Rocky 4, only instead of a blonde Russian guy, it's Cartman. We start with a big bad villain going unpunished for the millionth time, and so in the name of justice, Wendy challenges him to a fight. Not because she's stronger than him, but because nobody else will, and it's the right thing to do. The villain tries to beat her by using all sorts of unfair tricks and tactics, but her heart is pure and she holds true to her word. She remains focused on her goal of taking him down, but despite her best efforts, the villain outsmarts her. All hope seems to be lost, all until she gets the motivational speech she needed to get back into the ring and come out victorious. See what I'm saying? Wendy's the real hero here. In fact, I'd even argue that this is actually a Wendy episode masquerading as a Cartman episode, which is why it's so significant that Cartman hijacked the breast cancer presentation that started this whole thing off. Because let's face it, Wendy doesn't get a lot of focus in this show, so the fact that this episode does, and it's a story about her finding the courage to take down the bad guy in a fight, plus we see her grandma? Yeah, that's my big twist for this video, that this episode is just girl Rocky. But hey, at least that adds to why the ending is so satisfying. It's not just because we get to see Cartman get his ass kicked, it's also because we get to see the hero of the story win, and that feels good.
Did you know I'm a breast cancer survivor?
Ma'am?
Cancer is pure evil. It is a fat little lump that needs to be destroyed. You have to fight it. You have to
fight Cartman.
This framing of Cartman as cancer, as the fat little lump that will take everything from you if you don't stop it, is a brilliant moment. I mean, it's such an obvious analogy, but it comes so unexpectedly because of how we're hearing it. Like, I don't think anyone expected Principal Victoria to encourage Wendy like this, at least not back in season 12. I know that we eventually reach a point where she literally throws Eric under a bus, but I think this was actually the first time that we got to see that side of her. And honestly, it kind of makes me miss her character a bit, even though I find PC Principal hilarious. But what I think makes this cancer analogy so especially great is in how it dehumanizes Cartman. Because for this entire episode, he essentially acts like this hollow husk of a person that will act without remorse and go to any length he can to avoid consequence. He even literally says at one point that he has no self-respect.
Jesus Christ, do you have no sense of self-respect?
No, unless you want me to. You want me to have self-respect, then I will.
We see it in the way he cycles through his lies and tactics to get his way, and we see it in how he learns nothing from the situation, immediately returning to being terrible without remorse. There is just no sense of empathy or sympathy when it comes to Cartman, so viewing him as a sort of parasite, as a cancer, ends up being extremely appropriate. Plus it gives Wendy the confidence and moral justification she needs to finally kick his ass.
Oh boy, here we go. It's about freaking time.
All right, let's do it.
So before we get into the big fight itself, I just want to make one last comment about how alive the school feels here. Because the way everyone is gathered around to watch, with the palpable excitement in the air, it really captures that feeling of what it actually was like when a fight would break out at school and everybody knew about it. But what really stands out to me is how the entire situation feels like a huge step up from how they depicted a similar scenario back in season 3's Tweek vs. Craig. I mean, that episode is great, but it wasn't quite able to carry the same energy as this one. And yeah, I know the show was smaller back then, so there weren't as many characters or as much production value, but I actually think it has way more to do with the improvement in writing quality. The excitement for the fight has been building since the second scene of this episode. It's woven into Cartman's journey. That's what really gives it this huge payoff feeling, especially with the addition of Butter's little side arc and how giddy and excited he is here. Also, remember when I said that the goth kids were just filler earlier in this episode? Yeah, I just realized that I'm stupid and that it wasn't about them talking to Stan, it was just about them denying their interest in the fight, which we see in this scene was a lie, which is the whole joke. Everybody wants to see the fight, even the goth kids. First of all, let me apologize for having to cut that up a bit. There's an Oasis song, YouTube copyright thing, it is what it is. But anyways, what a beautiful image. Just look at how absolutely destroyed Cartman is here. I imagine this is one of the most gratifying moments in the entire series for some people, especially for people like my brother who think that Cartman is a huge asshole that deserves every instance of him suffering. Just everything about this fight hits so hard. The song choice, the back and forth between Cartman and Wendy, the absolute brutality of how hard she beats him. And I really love the dynamic camera movements that we get in this fight too. I think it helps deliver that raw carnage vibe because it feels almost like found footage at times, like a human is holding the camera. And yeah, it's no surprise to me that this has gone down as one of the most iconic moments in the entire series, because it really is executed perfectly. Even when it comes to little things, like how Cartman is still trying to save face when he's seconds away from getting beaten to a pulp. And of course that one line from Butters, finally getting exactly what he wanted for the entire episode, no longer needing to hide it, which just gives the scene a little extra bit of satisfaction.
Come up, Wendy.
It's good stuff, but there is one thing that needs to be said. What the f is this blue truck shirt that Cartman is wearing? Because I seem to remember him having a wife beater type thing back when he fought Kyle in season 7, which is also what he wore in the Ozempic special when he fantasized about being skinny. And I'm just not willing to believe or swallow that pill that Cartman wears multiple shirts. Also, when the camera freezes and all the kids cheering, their faces look different from shot to shot, even though it's supposed to be the same second.
I'm finished!
A few moments later.
My school life is over because now all the guys don't think I'm cute. Dude, we never thought you were cool.
As a PTA fan, I gotta say, love the reference to There Will Be Blood when Wendy says she's finished. Like, it's so out of nowhere, but it fits perfectly anyways. And I can't say I'm that surprised by it. Clearly, Trey and Matt are huge fans of the movie since this isn't even the only time that they've referenced it. Anyways, this final scene is seriously the most perfect way they could have ended an episode like this. Because as I mentioned earlier, I believe that this is secretly a Wendy episode masquerading as a Cartman episode. And since Cartman is this delusional, self-absorbed kid that makes everything about himself, this final moment couldn't be more accurate. Because when the other kids tell him that they've always thought he was a loser, and that their opinion of him is so low that losing to Wendy changes nothing, he somehow transforms his loss into a victory, which is simultaneously the most Cartman thing to do ever, while also being the perfect tool to reset everything back to normal at the end, like most South Park episodes do. It's just very tight and focused writing, as we've seen throughout this entire episode. But yeah, what better way to end an episode where Cartman hijacks Wendy's story than by having him hijack her happy ending too? It's funny, it's demented, and it's genius. A perfect end to a perfect episode.
Yeah, I've been so worried about what you guys were gonna think of me getting beat up by a girl, and it turns out you think I'm cool no matter what. Oh God, what a relief. Yay!